Hello everyone, my name is Father Ted Trinko. I'm a priest of the Institute of the Incarnate Word serving in Maryland, the United States of America. Today is January 27th, and the gospel comes from the 4th chapter of Mark's Gospel, verses 35 to 41. And we read, "On that day as evening drew on, Jesus said to his disciples, 'Let us cross to the other side.' Leaving the crowd, they took Jesus with them in the boat just as he was, and other boats were with him. A violent squall came up, and waves were breaking over the boat, so that it was already filling up. Jesus was in the stern, asleep on a cushion. They woke him and said to him, 'Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?' He woke up, rebuked the wind, and said to the sea, 'Quiet, be still.' The wind ceased, and there was great calm. Then he asked them, 'Why are you terrified? Do you not yet have faith?' They were filled with great awe and said to one another, 'Who then is this, whom even the wind and sea obey?'" Now, we heard in today's first reading, if you go to the Mass, how David was led to contrition by the prophet Nathan after he had sinned with Bathsheba. And let's take a look at what happened immediately before this first reading, how King David committed 4 great sins all in one reading. First, he broke the 9th commandment by coveting his neighbor's wife, Bathsheba. Second, he broke the 6th commandment by committing adultery with her. Third, he broke the 8th commandment by deceitfully trying to cover it up after he heard Bathsheba was pregnant. And finally, he broke the 5th commandment by having her husband, Uriah the Hittite, killed in a siege. At this point, it should be obvious what we read next. In the sight of the Lord, what David had done was evil. Despite that, David seems not to recognize his own sin. He takes Bathsheba to live with him and continues ruling just like before. He doesn't even realize that the prophet Nathan's whole story about the ewe lamb is actually an image of the sin he just committed. In this sense, King David committed a very modern sin. For as the popes continue to remind us, one of the greatest sins in today's day and age is the loss of the sense of sin. People just don't think they're sinners today. Many of us have lost the sense of our own culpability. But God does not want us to stay in this state of sin. He wants everyone to turn from sin and no one to be lost, as the Apostle Peter tells us. Even if we don't recognize our own sin, we can still be guilty of it, like Pope Benedict XVI said. "Failure to recognize my guilt, the illusion of my innocence, does not justify me and does not save me, because I am culpable for the numbness of my conscience and my incapacity to recognize the evil in me for what it is." Ignorance does not save, and that's why it's a spiritual work of mercy to instruct the ignorant. To get out of this ignorant state of guilt, God sends us the grace of conversion. In David's case, this grace came in the person of the prophet Nathan, who told him of the graphic injustice of a rich man towards his poor neighbor. David might have been too blind to have seen his own sin, but he saw that of the rich man in the story and vowed, "As the Lord lives, the man who has done this merits death, because he had no pity." This is only natural, and we all experience it on a daily basis. Perhaps we haven't done anything as dramatic as King David, but we've all seen with great ease the sins of others before we see our own sins. It's easy for us to see the splinter in our neighbor's eyes while being unaware of the log in our own. We are very bold to accuse others of wrongdoing, and perhaps they did in fact do something wrong, but rarely take a moment to examine ourselves. Knowing ourselves and our guilt is something rather challenging, but the very fact that we can see the guilt in others with great ease can be turned to our advantage. For it often happens that the same sin we see in another person is that which is present in us. In this way, the faults of others can become a mirror in which we see our own sins. As Fulton Sheen said, "We judge others by ourselves and attribute to others the vices from which we ourselves refuse to abstain." So we can ask ourselves, what do other people do that infuriates me? What sins do they commit that I pick up on? Because identifying that could help me to identify some of my own shortcomings so I'm not so ignorant of my guilt like King David was. Once we recognize that we are guilty of some of the same stuff we see in our neighbor, we need to react like King David, who cried out, "I have sinned against the Lord." Then he proceeded to fast, do penance, lie on the ground in sackcloth with ashes, and asked forgiveness. Today's responsorial psalm was composed by David immediately following this sin. It begins, "Have mercy on me, O God, in accord with your merciful love. In your abundant compassion, blot out my transgressions. Thoroughly wash away my guilt. And from my sin, cleanse me. Create a clean heart in me, O God." If not these words, then these sentiments ought to be on our lips every time we approach the confessional. Let's ask Our Lady, Mother of Mercy, to intercede for us that we might always have the grace to hear the voice of God talking to us in our consciences. May her abiding presence give us comfort that no matter how stormy our lives may be, we might not perish, but might continue to regularly receive Jesus' mercy in the sacrament of reconciliation.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed hearing the gospel and homily, I invite you to share it with someone you know who may also find it rewarding, and also to subscribe to the Catholic Voice channel. Please see in the description below if you would like to receive a text message for each daily gospel and homily. Please also keep our missionary priests throughout the world in your prayers. Thank you, and God bless.